of funding. For that reason, this year's speaker series is designed to be a practical roadmap for the grant writing process, from shaping an idea to building the proposal, budgeting, and planning what comes next after the funder's decision. Over the coming months, you'll hear from an outstanding group of scholars covering the full arc of that journey. I also want to extend our sincere thanks to the National Institute of Justice for funding and supporting CERC and the work that we are doing. Their investment has made this center and everything you see here today and the coming months possible. We are especially grateful to our partner, Dr. Angela Moore, Senior Science Advisor at NIJ. Dr. Moore has been with us since day one, since the very beginning. And she has been more than a program officer. She has been a true partner in helping us shape and guide the center to what it is today. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Dr. Moore to give a few words.
Okay, thank you so much, Joelle, and welcome everyone to this inaugural session of the CERC-MSI Speaker Series. We are so delighted for all of you that are joining us today. I am ecstatic that this is finally happening. It's been some years in the making for sure, and there were some concerns about us being able to move forward, but we're here, and I trust that this is going to be a great session, a good learning experience for all of us, and that this would be an opportunity to move forward with collaborative work for everyone that's involved. I do hope that you get a lot out of this session, good information, connections, and will be able to move forward as you do your work in the justice space and hopefully apply to NIJ for some funding in the future. I just want to take this opportunity to provide sincere thanks, gratitude, and appreciation for all the work that Joelle, Joss, and Justice have done on the front line, so to speak, as well as Noreen and Davia. I hope I'm saying her name right because I have not yet met her in person, but these two women have been in the background, but doing tremendous work to make the CERC successful. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your time. And I look forward to a successful event. And thanks again, Joelle, for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. We really appreciate you being with us today and setting the stage for this series. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Joshua Freilich, co-director of CERC and host of the speaker series. Josh is a professor of criminal justice at John Jay College. And he's going to take us into today's program and introduce us to our speaker. Josh? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Dr. Capellan, Dr. Moore. I just want to reiterate what Dr. Capellan said, that we're very excited about the center and its potential, as well as the speaker series in particular. Again, just to reiterate what Dr. Capellan said, we're very grateful to both NIJ in general and to Dr. Angela Moore in particular. She's really been an invaluable resource. So let's begin. Welcome everybody to the CERC speaker series that's going to focus on grant getting and funded research. As Dr. Capellan said, I'm the co-director of CERC and I'm assisting Dr. Capellan, the director. So today's session is titled The Grant Proposal Roadmap, From Planning to Writing, and our presenter is my colleague, Dr. Hong-In Sung. In terms of logistics, we will have around 90 minutes in total. The session lasts until 1 p.m. Dr. Sung will present around 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have time for around 20 to 25 minutes Q&A session. In terms of questions, please submit all questions via the question box. Our center managers, Justice Evans and Noreen Ali, will organize the questions, and I will present them to Dr. Sung at the conclusion of his presentation. Also, at the conclusion of today's talk, everybody will be invited to complete a post-event survey. Please do fill it out. The purpose is to get feedback so that we can refine things in the future and just enhance our talks and programming going forward. As Dr. Capellan said, our speaker today, who we're very happy to have, is Dr. Hung-In Sung. He is my colleague in the Criminal Justice Department at John Jay College. Dr. Sung is a very widely respected scholar. His work sits at the intersection of criminology, public health, political governance, and importantly, social policy. Over the course of his 25-year career, he's built a reputation for bringing empirical rigor to some of the most complex questions facing justice systems today. He's particularly focused on rehabilitation, public corruption, police performance, gender violence, and I just want to stress the design and implementation of effective and humane policies. Dr. Sung also recently stepped down after serving for 5 years as the Director of International Research Partnerships at John Jay College. In that role, he built collaborations with foreign governments, foreign agencies, universities to enhance research capacity, as well as to provide training based upon best practices to practitioners and policymakers working on policing, corrections, and related matters. Dr. Sung is the past recipient of a Du Bois Fellowship from the National Institute of Justice, Department of Justice, and he's currently a Fulbright Specialist focusing on justice administration for the U.S. Department of State for the 2025 to 2028 term. And finally, most relevant for today's talk, Dr. Sung has received close to $15 million in external funding from federal agencies, private foundations, and other organizations. It's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Sung for today's presentation.
Thank you, Josh and Joel, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for making time for this session. In our time together, I want to make grants feel less like a mystery and more like a repeatable workflow. My goal is not to turn you into a full-time grant writer. I don't know how to do that, but to help you see the steps and know who to involve and avoid the common traps that lead to last-minute chaos in the process of grant writing. Over the next 5 weeks, you will learn how to carry out each step of the process effectively from some true experts in our field. Let me see. How can I share? Okay. It's good, right? I will move through this morning, I will move through the process in a sequence that more or less matches real life. We will also spend a few minutes on the use of AI in grant writing. As we go, I will share a few practical examples and probably small habits that you can adopt right away. And please free to jot down questions, and then we can discuss or reflect together after my presentation. Let me start with a simple idea, right? Grants are a way to expand your scholarly capacity. And capacity means the ability to do work at a scale and level of rigor that your regular institutional budget cannot easily support. At many research emerging or minority serving institutions, internal funds can cover travel, small pilot work, or a modest event. But when your work becomes more complex or larger in scale, you quickly hit a ceiling. think about what it takes to do serious data collection, careful evaluation, or meaningful community partnerships. You need people, you need time, and you need money. Here is a very practical example. If you want to interview 200 participants across 3 cities, you are not just paying for your time. You need staff time to recruit and schedule incentives for participants to transcribe interviews. Oh, now we rely on AI for that. You need to secure data storage and the software to manage and analyze the data that you collect. That is grant territory. Grants also matter for your career momentum. They help you publish because they fund the research process. They help you build a track record that future reviewers can trust. And they signal credibility to partners, whether those partners are government agencies, community organizations, or other universities. When a funder invests in your project, it communicates that your work has value and that you can deliver. Another big benefit, I think, is for students and staff. Grants can fund research assistants and paid training opportunities that build real skills and create pathways for professional growth for those people who work for you. And I want to end this slide with a mindset. The goal is not to chase one opportunity. The goal is to build a repeatable habit, an innovation pipeline where you regularly scan for opportunities, develop new ideas, and strengthen your ability to deliver over time. A grant is not a donation. It is not, but it is pretty close to a contract with rules. Those rules shape what you can propose, what you can spend, and how you will be judged. Grant makers are not in the business of rewarding great ideas with cash. Rather, they invest in change for a better tomorrow. So treat the RFP, the request for proposals, as a Bible. Everything you do should trace back to it. If you are unsure about something, you do not guess. You go back to the request for proposal. A practical habit that helps it is to print the RFP or save it as a Word document and build a checklist. Your checklist should include the required sections, the attachments, page limits, formatting rules, and the review criteria. This alone prevents many avoidable mistakes. Examples, right? Why this matters. First, page limits, for example. If RFP says 12 pages maximum, and you submit 13, your application will be rejected without review. It does not matter how good your idea is. The rule is the rule. After the 2008 financial crisis, the Obama administration injected a large amount of stimulus funding into the economy. And then through that, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, NIH received $11 billion to distribute for research. And back then, I submitted 2 grant applications with service providers here in New York City to study substance abuse, gambling, and gender-based violence. But both were rejected within 2 weeks of submission without review. And the reason was because the biosketch section allowed only 10 bibliographic citations, and I listed 13. Now, it then took me a few days to lick the wounds and to craft an apology to the many partners who had helped assemble those 2 proposals. And you do not want to learn the lesson the hard way. And second, allowable costs and indirect costs are complex matters. If the RFP caps indirect cost at a certain percentage, your budget must respect that cap, even if your institution has a higher negotiated rate. If you ignore the cap, the application can be deemed non-compliant, and so on. So again, I'll highlight that the RFP must be the Bible for the applicant PIs. But also, when a grant is awarded, that contract is always between the funder and your institution and not with you. So your university can remove you as the PI or replace you with someone else whenever they think it is necessary. And that's the dichotomy, right? The RFP must be the PI, it must be the Bible for the PIs. But when awarded the grant is for the institution. And then the next step is to understand the funding landscape and what kind of grant you are actually pursuing. So what is the funder buying in this? In most cases, it is one of three things: new knowledge, your growth, or a solution to a defined problem. The research grants are designed to generate new knowledge and fill gaps. Reviewers want innovative research questions, clear hypotheses, strong design and methods, and a plan that leads to publishable findings. For example, you might study how certain deployments of preventive patrol reduce the heat in crime hotspots. And then you produce evidence that improves our understanding of the problem. And in that case, the value of your work here is your contribution to scientific knowledge. But then we find fellowships. A fellowship can be on the same topic, exactly the same topic, but the focus shifts. The funder is investing in you. Reviewers look for a training plan, a strategy of mentoring, career trajectory, and why this opportunity will develop you into a scholar or practitioner leader you want to become. And then lastly, we have the problem-solving grants, and sometimes called the implementation grants, right? Here, the funder is buying a solution that meets a public need. In this case, the reviewers want community outcomes, improved capacity, and clear measurement of change. For example, you might pilot a training program on hotspot policing in a specific city and show measurable improvements in crime reduction in certain neighborhoods, not just publish a paper. In research projects, a no finding can sometimes still be a good outcome because it advances our knowledge. But in problem-solving projects, a no impact is always bad, and you want to avoid that. A practical cue that helps is to name the primary product before you draft. Is the primary product a set of papers? Is it a cohort of trained professionals? Is it a productive center of excellence, like the one that's being run by Joel and Josh? Once you name that, your narrative becomes more coherent because every effort supports the product that the grant maker is paying for. Now that we have clarified what type of grants we are dealing with, the next question is where you actually find these opportunities. Where do you search? There's a split in search tools, right? For government grants, you will usually use public databases. Grants.gov is the central place to find and apply for many federal opportunities. And then probably each state or city may have its own funding database. If you're looking at the Department of Justice, you will also see Just Grants as part of the submission process. In the private foundation world, databases like Candid or Pivot help you identify private funders. Now, in terms of workflow, I recommend you to treat the search like a small habit. Set keyword alerts, save searches, review them weekly. I think for junior and emerging researchers, this is one of the simplest way to build a pipeline without feeling overwhelmed. Just spend 10 minutes a week, and that can lead to opportunities you would never see otherwise. And then if you work in crime and justice, like we do, you must be creative in identifying potential funders. Many scholars automatically think of Department of Justice. And yes, DOJ is a natural home, but it is not the only one. Homeland Security has funded major research on terrorism, radicalization, and prevention. FEMA supports resilience and disaster-related security research. And the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships invest in prevention frameworks to counter violent extremism. If your work touches community safety, preparedness, or threat prevention, the Department of Homeland Security may be highly relevant. And then if you study substance abuse, violence, trauma, or life course development, you should be looking at NIH, CDC, and other agencies under the Department of Health and Human Services. Public health and criminal justice overlap far more than many people realize. Without NIH, for example, we wouldn't have that chapter on life course criminology in our criminology textbooks. They funded a good chunk of everything we know about life course criminology. Then we have the Department of Defense, which funds science and technology tied to national security. It also invests heavily in cybersecurity and regional security studies, including transnational organized crime and terrorism. Your work may fit there even if you do not wear a uniform. And don't forget, when I found this out, that I was shocked that DOD is the second largest funder of breast cancer research in this country. Yes, the Department of Defense or War, as now it is known. And internationally, the Department of State invests a lot more than DOJ in combating transnational organized crime, human trafficking, and environmental crime, such as wildlife trafficking. The point is simple. Grant ecosystems are complex. The more time you spend learning who funds what, the more opportunities you will discover. Creativity in identifying funders is not optional. It is a professional survival skill that you must have. Once you find an opportunity that looks promising, the next step is to turn your interest into a clear funding goal. Many proposals fail because they start with a topic and not a funding goal. A topic is something like community policing or emergency management. A funding goal is a measurable outcome that a funder can buy. Start by defining the outcome you want. Are you aiming for publishable science, some sort of community impact, capacity building, policy change? Then translate that into a funder promise. What changes? For whom? By when? And how you will prove it. I like to use a simple promise statement formula. I don't even know whether that's English. A promise statement, right? Change plus population plus timeline plus proof. Here's the example on the slide. Within 36 months, we will train 200 mid-rank police managers and improve their emergency management competence by 70%. You can see the population, the timeline, and the proof all in one sentence. And this is also where outputs versus outcomes matter, right? Outputs are what you produce, such as modules, a toolkit, a data set, number of people trained. But then outcomes are what changes, such as in skills, behavior, decision, quality, or coordination that you expect to produce. Both should be explicit, and the outcome should be measurable. Once you have this one sentence promise that you want to make to the funder, you can draft with much less confusion because every paragraph supports the promise. After the goal is clear, the next step is a readiness check. You do not want to promise what you cannot deliver. Funders want to be confident that you can deliver. And confidence is not just about your idea, it is about your institutional readiness, your partners, your compliance plan, and your ability to manage money and people. So start with your sponsor research or grants office, if you have one, if your college or your organization have a grants office. They handle routing, compliance, submission, and often have templates that save your time. The key advice here is to contact them as soon as you decide to apply, not when the deadline is close. When a grants office is not available, you need your department chair or school dean involved early, especially if there will be commitments such as course release, space, or cost share. These are not things you want to negotiate at the last minute. Finance and human resources matter because your budget has to be real. Many proposals fail late because the budget is unrealistic or non-compliant. Salary rates and fringe benefits, hiring timelines, purchasing rules, and sub-award setup all have rules, right? So bringing finance people in early prevents unpleasant surprises. If you have sub-award partners, you need scope of their work, budget, documents, and letters of support. Partners also need time to produce these items. And do not forget IRB and compliance. If you have human subjects, privacy issues, data security, minors or prisoners in the sample, or on international engagements, your workflow changes and you need early consultation as well. The way to prepare your grants office, I think, is to have an intake packet for them. Those will be some simple documents that can help them understand all those great ideas that you have in your mind. It's one of the best tools for reducing stress. It prevents last-minute surprises and speeds approval because it gives yourself and your grant office a shared starting point. It begins with a one-page draft project summary. The summary should state the problem, the aim, the method, the outcomes, and the rough timeline. Next is the draft budget with assumptions. A draft budget allows finance to spot unallowable costs early. It also helps you see whether your promise statement is realistic. If you say you will train 200 people, does your budget actually include the cost of training delivery, travel, evaluation, and staffing? Include a key personnel list and a sub-recipient list. Identify which institutional partners are confirmed versus those tentative, and also include contacts. This helps your team manage outreach and follow up. Finally, it's a great idea to list compliance flags. If you have minors, as I said before, prisoners or sensitive data or international sites, you need to disclose that early because approvals and timelines change in those cases. What if you do not have a grants office? You can still do this. You just need a micro workflow that functions like a small grants office. Start by mapping a simple workflow that includes your chair or dean, the finance person, and one administrative contact person or point person. The goal is clarity about who does what and when. You also need to identify signatory authority, who can legally sign and submit the application. This is not a small detail. If you do not have an authorized official, you can build a full proposal and still be unable to submit it. And then the finance person is important because the person may have access to entity registration information, while a department administrator can prepare documents and coordinate routing. And that kind of division of labor can work if you define it. It has to be defined. And you need to get the consensus from the team. Use funder help desk early. They can answer questions about eligibility portals and whatever questions you have. Many agencies allow questions prior to the deadline from potential applicants, and then they publish their answers. They share those answers with everybody, right? Do not avoid help desks. They exist to prevent confusion. Borrow templates. You may have senior colleagues who have done this many times before. Ask them. NIH, NSF, and DOJ provide sample budgets, data plans, and checklists. Templates reduce guesswork and help you learn the language funders expect. Use peer networks. Ask senior colleagues, as I just said, for samples and for lessons about what went wrong or what went right. People are usually willing to share because everyone remembers the first time they applied. The goal is to reduce guesswork and make the process repeatable again. And that brings us to the biggest time sink in many submissions, and that is registrations and systems. This is where many teams lose a week or even miss a deadline entirely. So treat systems as part of your project plan, not an afterthought. The basic sequence is straightforward. You need a valid EUI, that's the unique identity identifier, and an active SAM.gov registration. Then you need portal accounts such as grants.gov, Workplace. Some agencies add additional portals. For DOJ, for example, you may submit through grants.gov and then work in just grants. The timing reality matters. Registration can take 7 to 10 business days, sometimes longer. And DOJ often recommends starting some registration or renewal about 30 days before the deadline. Those are not minor details. They should shape your internal timeline. Division of labor matters. Several people can write a proposal, but only one authorized representative can legally sign and submit the application. You may also need an entity institution administrator who can manage access. Now, if you do not clarify roles, you may find yourself ready to submit your application, but locked out of the system. So a practical step is to create a one-page roles and access sheet with names and emails and what each person can do. It sounds basic, but it prevents frantic emails in the final week. And one more important reminder: confirm registration before you draft the final document. You do not want to finish a beautiful narrative and then learn that your entity registration has expired. Once systems are ready, the next challenge is the proposal narrative, how you write the narrative in a way reviewer can score and appreciate. You will learn how to do this well in the next few weeks. So now I just want to highlight that even a very strong narrative can fail if you do not manage time. And in this sense, backward planning is a habit that is important because it's a habit that separates calm submissions from stressful ones. Start by setting internal deadlines for the major milestones: a narrative draft, a budget lock, attachments, final review, and upload. Then build stakeholder touch points into a schedule. Chair and dean commitments should happen early. Finance review should happen before you lock the budget, not after. If human subjects are likely to be involved, start the IRB consultation early, even before you submit, so you do not design a plan that cannot be approved. Give your sponsor research of office enough time for budgets, subrecipient documents, and compliance checks. These items often arrive late, especially letters and partner documents. Build buffer time to avoid last minute or last second submissions. If you plan internal deadlines 1 or 2 weeks before the funder deadline, you protect yourself against the unexpected. So these are the major milestones in preparation. Right? Now, let's talk a little bit about AI. All right, confession time. I didn't start this slide by thinking deeply. I started it by asking Gemini. I simply typed something like, "Hey, Gemini, how are researchers using you for grant writing?" And Gemini basically replied, "Here are the greatest hits." And what you see on this slide is essentially Gemini's answer. And it is more or less the way I and many of my colleagues now use AI tools for grant writing. First, initial draft and brainstorming. This is the most common use and probably one of the least controversial. People use AI to generate an outline, propose a structure for a project summary. You can ask for multiple versions of a problem statement, a logic model, aims, or theory of change, right? The key is treat it like a brainstorming partner and not like the author of your work. As an author, AI can only give you a mediocre product because other applicants use it too. Your own brain will be the tiebreaker. So you should give space for your brain to show its prowess. And second, we use AI for data gathering, right? Researchers often prompt AI to provide statistics, identify sources, or suggest bodies of literature. But AI itself is not a source. It's a pointer. If it gives you statistics, you still have to verify it in the original publication. So think of AI as a research assistant who is brilliant, fast, and occasionally drunk, and often hallucinating without knowing it. And the third use of AI in the process, customization and tone adjustment. This is where AI can feel almost magical. And you can paste a draft paragraph and say, Rewrite this in the tone of the funder, or use language that aligns with funders' priorities, or I don't know, act like a reviewer and critique clarity and feasibility. We use AI to translate what we mean into what the program officer wants to read. It's also great for providing consistency across sections, abstract, significance, innovation, approach, and broader impacts without sounding like 5 different people writing it. And lastly, we use it for copy editing and compliance. This is, the quiet superpower. AI helps check word count limits, tighten a dense paragraph, standardize terminology, fix grammar, and ensure the document stays consistent with the solicitations required headings. It can also help you create compliance checklists from an RFP so you don't miss that one hidden requirement on page, 47 that determines whether you get reviewed or rejected. So AI is most valuable as a planning, refining, and quality control tool. It doesn't write your grant for you. It helps you write a more fundable version of the grant that you already know you should be writing. And next, I'm going to quickly share, given the time constraint we have, 3 of the 10 rules proposed by this wonderful group of researchers from Stanford University School of Medicine. They published this a little bit more than a year ago. I encourage you to read the actual paper. You'll find it very helpful. Always check the funder's rules before you use AI. Policies are not consistent across funding agencies, and they change quickly. Now, here at John Jay College, our AI policies have been under review for, almost 2-3 years. We've been changing the rules all the time. And, that happens with grant makers. Some funders like NSF allow AI with disclosure. Others limit it, and some like NIH may prohibit certain uses altogether. So you should keep checking guidance from the specific sponsor you are applying to, because what is acceptable for one agency or one cycle may not be acceptable for another. These Stanford researchers also recommend disclosing AI use even when disclosure is not explicitly required, so you avoid surprises later. And this is what we ask our students to do, right? You can use ChatGPT, Gemini, Cloud, whatever, for your term paper, but you have to keep that first draft that you write, and you have to keep the prompt that you use, so that the instructor can double check, triple check, and make sure that plagiarism is not involved. The same principles apply to grant writing. So before you draft, confirm the policy, confirm what needs to be disclosed, and then use AI only within those boundaries. The rule 2 is about privacy. Protect your ideas and your data. Public chatbots often store prompts and conversations to improve their models, right? Which means that what you paste in may not stay private. We should protect not just the end product of our work, but the whole process of production. Even if the AI platform offers deletion options, you should assume that sensitive details do not belong in a public chatbot. A safer approach is to use approved, if you work for government agencies, sometimes you find that institutional AI tools or locally hosted model that runs offline when possible. At minimum, we should strip out identifying details, unpublished findings, and any information we would not share with a stranger. In some agencies, grant reviewers are not allowed to, to put contents of people's applications into those publicly accessible AI tools. I think that's ethical practice that should be required universally. All right, so do not fall in love with AI. Human feedback still matters. AI is fast, but it is not a substitute for mentors, peers, and experienced grant writers. Humans are better at catching errors, judging fit, and understanding nuances. So use AI and people together. Let AI help you polish drafts quickly, then bring those drafts to humans for critical review. For junior investigators, especially, learning to request, receive, and incorporate human feedback is essential to long-term success. And let me close with a simple message. This process is repeatable. Grants are not mystery work. They are a workflow, planning, writing, approvals, and submission. Once you build the roadmap, you can reuse it for every submission. So I also encourage you to book more of these useful sites, create accounts early before a deadline is looming. That one habit saves a lot of stress. So thank you for your attention. And I'm happy to listen to my colleagues and probably we'll take questions now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sung, for this terrific talk. As noted, we have some time for Q&A. For people in the audience, you still have a couple of minutes to post any remaining questions in the box, and we will get to all of them. But before we do, I'm just going to briefly turn things back to our director, Dr. Capellan, who has a couple of things to add.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we move on, one quick plug. So we have paired the speaker series with what we're calling the Proposal Development Playbook, which consists of a set of recorded companion sessions designed to be supplemental to the speaker series. The idea is simple. You come to the talks for the big picture, and then you use the playbook modules for the tools, the templates, the workflows that you can apply immediately as you develop your proposal. These modules are intentionally couched between our live sessions so you can keep the momentum in the weeks in between. The first module is gonna drop today. Justice is gonna put the link in the message box, but we'll be mailing the links this week. So to make sure to stay in the loop, to visit our website and join our mailing list. So the playbook is led by Steve Robichaud, Assistant Director of Proposal Development at Swarthmore College, and an active member of the National Organization of Research Development Professionals, NORDAP, Society of Research Administrators International, and the National Council of University Research Administrators. Steve, would you like to say a few words?
Absolutely. And thank you, Joelle, for inviting me to be a part of these proceedings. Thank you, Dr. Sung, for your wonderful presentation, which in a lovely way corresponds to my own. And Dr. Frelick, good to meet you as well. Everyone, it's good to see all of you, and I'm excited to be a part of this presentation, albeit asynchronously. And so what I want to do is just reinforce what Joelle is saying in that this is a supplemental series to what you're experiencing with the main speaker series. So think of me as a kind of understudy. And so my role is not as a scientist per se, but rather as the research administration and research development professional. So what we'll go over in those 5 sessions is to impart, not just repeat, but reinforce some of the learnings that you learned today and also in subsequent sessions. And it includes 5 different topics. So the first we'll talk about matters pre-award. So we'll reinforce some of what you discussed today. For example, on a previous slide, Dr. Sung referred to, for example, various submission portals, various funders, various funding opportunities, databases. We will go over those and give you a little bit of a deeper dive into those questions. And I do this as not just somebody that knows this kind of information inside and out, but it's meant to be a kind of invitation. So feel free to listen to the sessions. They're about 30 to 35 minutes each. And so it's not meant to overwhelm your time, but rather to go a little bit more deeply if you have some additional questions. I'll leave you with this. I don't have my information on this session, but I'll make sure that in the CERC materials and on the website, I'd be more than happy to make this a long-term invitation if you'd like to speak to me as well as an external collaborator in terms of learning more about how to actually prepare and submit applications from an administrative point of view. And so with that being said, I'll also mention the succeeding sessions will not just talk about pre-award in the first session. The second refers to questions of how to actually submit. The third refers to declinations, which can be a bit disappointing, but I think, as Dr. Sun mentioned, having a resilience mindset is really important, and it helps you understand a long-term strategy when it comes to reinforcing your research enterprise and your research programs. Fourth, pardon me, we're going to talk about how to actually begin the process of formally accepting an award. And then finally, we talk about prospect research. So Dr. Sung mentioned in the previous slide, for example, databases like Pivot. There's also ones called Spin. There's Candid, as he mentioned as well. We'll go into a little bit more there as well. So those sessions will progressively drop. And let me end by saying that the goal here is to make sure that if you feel overwhelmed, that's okay. But there are a lot of people out there, and there's a very large and rich community of scholars and practitioners like myself that can help you. So this is a wonderful tool, and I'm really glad to be a part of this and to support you guys. And if you have any questions, let me know. But again, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to hear not only the remaining of this session, the remainder of this session, but also in the future. So welcome, guys, and pat yourselves on the back for doing the right thing. And looking forward to seeing you in a future session. Thanks, Joel, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Steve. Just for those that don't know, Steve and I, we go way back, 2016, 17. I was a wide-eyed assistant professor at another institution and seeking to submit my first grant proposal at NIJ. This is 2017, I believe. And I walked into Steve's office and he walked me through this process, a 3-month process of putting this proposal together. And to me, that was like such an amazing educational process. And I feel like I haven't done so bad since then. So that's all thanks to Steve. I think we can all benefit from what he has to offer.
Yeah, and he got that grant, which he's not telling you. So he's super talented. So remember that. As Dr. Sun mentioned, you can't replace human ingenuity and talent. So you got it in spades, my man. So I'm going to stop talking, but thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right, back to you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Joel and Steve. So we have some time, everybody, for our question and answer session. So we have a bunch of questions, and Dr. Sung, the first question is from a new assistant professor, very new to the grant process, and they have an interest in studying student-centered reentry and an advocacy initiative. But they said because they've never done a grant before, they're not really entirely sure where even to begin, like the very first step.
Okay, I'll start probably later. Steve, Joel, and Josh can chip in with better ideas. I think we have to align what we are interested in and also what the funders want to fund, right? So obviously, this seems to be a topic that falls into corrections or rehabilitation. And then we should start combing and searching for funding opportunities in this area. Um, the good thing is that there are some funding programs designed for new investigators or investigators coming from research emerging institutions. And oftentimes, they do not restrict that much on the topic that can be covered, that can be supported with their funds. NIH is particularly good at this. They have what's called area 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 grants that support researchers coming from universities that haven't received major grants from NIH in the past 5 or 10 years. And then new investigators applying to NIH funding to get some extra credits for being new. I mean, I think the way they define a new investigator is, that the first 10 postdoctoral years in the person's career. So those are all places that can give us greater room to maneuver. The first federal grant that I got was my Du Bois Fellowship, and so right, the themes of race and crime and justice there, but then beyond that, you can just be creative and do whatever you want. So at the time, I came to know a few undocumented immigrants in my own community. And then I told them, and then they told me their stories. I thought it would be interesting to study their relationship with local law enforcement agency. And that's how I developed. So waiting for a funding program that hits directly your interest is difficult, So you could probably do two things: tweak a little bit your interest so that it falls within the funding scope of our existing program, or you can chase those programs that focus more on people and institution than on topic. Josh, you have better ideas?
No, I mean, I think that's right on. I mean, the only thing that I would add, and it's just basically to repeat what Dr. Song said, is once you've identified a potential funder, I think doing what Dr. Capellan did, is perfect, which is just make an appointment to see your grants office. They can walk you through the process, but more importantly, all of the agencies have, it's not just the narrative, as Dr. Song said, there's all of these other requirements, attachments, and appendices that you have to do. So just talking to your grants office and figuring out what they're going to submit, what you're going to submit, making a checklist for yourself, I've always found that just to be very useful. So you don't make any mistakes and you get everything done so you're not disqualified. Dr. Capellan, did you have anything to add before we turn to the next question?
Just one more. In the cases where you're in an institution where there is no grant office per se, I think that one of the best tools that you have at your disposal is partnerships with people that have gotten grants, that are in an institution that have a grants office, and make a research collaboration. Not only do you take advantage of the other institution resources, but also and you learn from the most experienced from your experienced partner. I have uh, collaborated with people just because I wanna learn how they make their sausage, right? Like I just wanna kind of see under the hood how they think about grant writing, how the proposal, the development of the proposal. And I think these kind of partnerships are super key as a learning experience, but also making your whole writing process better too.
I wonder if I could jump in briefly on that subject. I'm so sorry if that's okay. But
Absolutely.
just to Just to follow up on the research administration side, as Joel mentions, that partnerships are so important, not only for the science, but as he points out, to help out with the administrative part of it, and that it's a resource, and that the community of, let's call them offices of sponsored programs, sometimes they have other names, research administration divisions, if you're fortunate to have that at a larger institution. But again, if you don't have that, finding a partner that does have those resources in place will be really helpful. And one thing I'd offer too, that I offer in some of my sessions, is that Pivot in particular is a database that allows you to systematically find that partner. So in addition to the funding opportunities that are listed based on NIJ or NSF, NIH, and the remainder of the federal suite of opportunities. They also have researcher profiles that allow you to find partners that are within the Pivot network, right? And so there are other partners out there, be it at John Jay or elsewhere, and so you can really expand your horizons. So that's something I'm happy to help with as well, in addition to what's been said already. So a really important question, and it's also a hard one. It's the blank page problem, right? And I think it's a way of getting around some of those issues. I'll finally note that on the question of AI, as Dr. Sun mentions, when it comes to composition, so having the question of how do you begin writing certain elements that it can help you to sort of outline ideas, but ultimately you want to have it critically analyzed by a human being. I would say too that AI can help you to find those partners, but also to help find that specific funding opportunity. So for example, in an AI search engine, now I would be very quick to say that I would only use an AI search engine if you have a privacy guarantee with the contract that with your institution. So for example, at Swarthmore, if we use Google Gemini and then also Notebook, which are Google products, we have a privacy guarantee in our contract with them that makes sure that anything that's put into the language learning model or the LLM is not used in their model. So that's it doesn't solve every issue, but it protects certain privacy guarantees, which is important. But let me also say too that you can use that to help find partners, but also help to find those funding opportunities. So if you have a list of, say, publications that are on your ORCID or on, say, a list of publications on your website, you could use that to help refine your search. So again, it's all about giving you more time to do what you were meant to do, which is to perform this great science. So I just wanted to add that as well in terms of what we're thinking about to start.
Great, that is terrific. Thank you. Dr. Sung, our second question flows pretty well with everything that's been said so far. And it's asking, is there ever a time when you could propose something somewhat beyond what the RFP says?
So my answer will be, what comes in two stages. First, never, never, ever during the application process. But once you get the grant, do it always, always. There's something called cost extension, which most agency allows, and I've been to more than a few reviewer panels evaluating proposals. And I still remember some of those conversations when we started to second guessing the true intention of the applicant. That's what we say, no, I know this guy. He's not a community policing guy. He does community corrections, and why doing this? And then, so you want to avoid that. If the funder says that this is the purpose of the funding program, you stick to that. But once you have some money in hand, right, you can always engage, you should always engage in that persuasion process to convince the funder that from the work that you're doing, you are identifying new needs that's related, new needs that are related to their interest, then that they should be funding. I'll give you an example. For my Du Bois Fellowship, I started proposing to study undocumented male migrant workers because they're visible everywhere. At the time, I thought that there were no females, and that was a gender, why speaking, is a lopsided community. But then I realized that women work indoors. as nannies and or they work in beauty salons. And so I submitted a request to NIJ asking, hey, it turns out that my initial assessment was wrong. There are men and women in this community. Can you give me 30,000, 50,000 more to track this group? And then now I do it systematically. I cannot, at least in the past 7 years, I've requested course extension to cover something new derived from what I was originally doing in every project that I manage. I would say that's the success rate was about 80%, a lot higher than my grant hit ratio. Now, as of now, after doing this for so many years, my hit ratio is still very low. 1 in 3 of my grant applications will be awarded with funding. But when I request course extension to study to do some new things, my success rate will be a lot higher than that. So no, during the application process, yes, once you have that pot of money in your hand.
Great. The next question, Dr. Sung, is also from a new faculty member who writes that they have so many things to do, teaching, service, etc. And taking into account that the odds are so low that they're going to get a grant, why is it a good use of their time?
I think that's why I think you should team up with others. PI shouldn't be the first step in your funded research career. You should be first a member of a funded research project, and then later on, and taking on more and more important responsibilities as you progress, and then eventually becoming a PI. And I would say, we have teaching, research, and grant seeking, right? You should build the foundation through teaching and publications first. And that will give you the credibility that's needed. And I remember that when I came to John Jay in 2006, one of the fun games that I did with my friend Josh was I did that. I don't want to blame him now. But he was my audience. We started to graph people's CVs. And one of the things, through all kinds of graphs. But one of the findings that we realized that colleagues who are better inserted in a few networks of researchers are always the most productive. When you just check their publications, right? And you realize, how many research groups the person is working with. And then the better network, the more productive you'll become. So that would some recommendation that will make. That's why we go to conferences. It's about, it has a social function in there. I don't know, Josh, Steve, and
I think I'll add to that if that's okay. Dr. Sun makes some excellent points there. And I would only add that he makes a very good point regarding, I've heard it described as the sophomore surge, right? So what they're describing there is NIH actually has data on this question because it's been an issue where at NIH in particular, if you crack into their funding portfolio, that's a really wonderful and high achievement. It's actually has a fairly low success rate at the first submission. But as he points out, being a part of an already funded collaboration can help get you those skills from the beginning so that when you do make your first submission, you might be more likely to succeed. But as I mentioned in some of my follow-up presentations, I'll note that at your second or third attempt, your on average, your ability to receive a grant, let's say from the NIH, improves to closer to 30 to 40%. In other words, the more you submit, the better off you're going to be. So I think it's best to think of the process as perhaps a three-step process. You may have to submit on the third time to get funding from a particular agency. But remember, during that time, you can recycle some of the same language you've used before. receive feedback from the funder. So as again, as Dr. Sung mentions, and my colleagues here have experienced, it really does benefit to think of it as a process. So I would say it's very much worth your time, but I think you have to adjust your expectation to know what you're in for. And I think, to not be discouraged at the first attempt is really important, and actually has data behind it. So.
Yeah, I'll just add two things. One about the previous question. With Hung En, always propose what is being asked. You're also allowed to ask questions before you submit your proposal. And you also, many funders like NIJ have these webinars where they talk about the research funding opportunity. This is a great time for you to listen in and hopefully grab something that is not in the RFP in itself. Okay. So I think because sometimes RFPs are not that clear, they're a little bit unclear about what they want or can be a little bit confusing. So having these kind of opportunities to engage with the funder is super welcome. And to this question, I would say, that you shouldn't see external funding as separate than publications, right? I feel you should see research external funding as a part of research, right? And you should start building up to that, right? So you start with publications. Through publications, you make great connections. You can collaborate with people. Those collaborations also lead to grant proposals too that get funded. So don't think of them as separate things. I think it's just a natural evolution of the same thing. And I think so in that way, you don't see it as a waste of time. It's just like any other thing that you're doing. You might win, you might not win, but if you don't win, you can always turn it into something else.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what are the biggest mistakes beginners make in grant writing?
I want to repeat something that Steve just said. I think in this business we have to grow a thick skin and know how to lick our wounds. It's like, what's the most important virtue for a doctoral student to get his or her degree? I think it's perseverance, and it's the same thing. We are all PhDs. That means that we do have the potential, the capacity to do it right. But it's going to be a development growth process. We shouldn't be failures should not defeat us. There are times, some of the largest grants that I ever grant are simply resubmissions, repackaging of the failed submissions that I had tried before. So no, that's the thing that the only thing that I want to share. But my colleagues surely will have other advices to give.
As usual, very wise advice. I would also add to when it comes to some initial mistakes, and as somebody that focuses on pre-award matters, these are things that can be often overlooked because quite understandably, if you're a PI and you're thinking about extending your research program, you're thinking in many cases about other details rather than, for example, one area that I find that faculty who are starting out may have an issue is doing an eligibility screening, just making sure, can your institution apply for this? Is it of the right size, scope, geography? Are you of the right stage in your career? Perhaps a grant opportunity may be, the NSF has a program called the Early Career Opportunity, right? And that's meant for faculty you could receive funding for up to 5 years to jumpstart your career, which is a wonderful opportunity. But if you're not in that stage as defined by the terms, you will have done work all for naught. So that's something that always pay attention to that. And that's for those of you that have the benefit of a research administration team, they'll be well suited to help you with that. And I think it's important to just keep that in mind. But yeah, lots of great things to think about at the beginning. But I would also add, as I reflect on the question of how to begin, I'd also recommend, in my view, it's worked real well in the past that once you have the eligibility all set and you're about to think about what you want to actually propose, it's good to take a budget first approach. And by that, I mean thinking about what are the areas that you really need to purchase, and that will help to improve your outline at the beginning. So in other words, if you find yourself writing something and then you write a budget, that can be a bit problematic because at the end you find yourself, I wrote a grant and it doesn't match up. And that can be an issue as well in your first application, is that one doesn't match the other. So a couple things to think about, but again, whether it's internally or through the partnerships that we described earlier, people will be able to help you with this.
Really great feedback from both Steve and Dr. Sung. Thank you both. Next question, Dr. Sung, is why do you think you have been so successful in obtaining external funding? And were you successful at first? And if so, what changed?
I am very grateful that my academic career here in the United States have been largely supported by external funding, every time that I needed it. And there are a few factors that have helped me to be better than before in doing this. The first thing is that I spent the first 5 years of my postdoctoral career working as a full-time researcher at a research center at Columbia University, So they pair me with some experienced investigators. Some of them are still active here in the field of criminal justice. One of them is Stephen Belenko. If you want to know everything about drug courts in the United States, you go to him. So I work with those great people who have been extremely generous to me. They even showed me the budget when I was just a research assistant. That was before I got my PhD. I was working from the DA's office, and they from time to time they'll say, Hong An, we need this section written by this date. Could you help with that? So I was trained in that sense. I was mentored in the field by great minds and great researchers in that manner. I'm glad that now most PhD programs offer, if not courses, at least workshops in grant writing. When I was in graduate school in the 90s, that wasn't available. That was even mentioned during my training. So I think having some good mentors and generous mentors is important. And then, as I said, you have to try, you have to aspire. In our private conversations, Joel, that was last week, right? We talked about the thirst for glory. And then I always thought that there are a few great programs in our field that have been extremely successful to instill that thirst for glory among their students. I think we're not doing a good job here at John Jay. We should be doing a better job. And, it's like every time I find graduates or colleagues, for example, with a degree from Maryland, they aspire that. I think that intention, that desire, it is important. And where does that come from? I think it's mentors that they have had. And so I think having good role models and great mentorings is important. And the rest is you just keep trying. This is like learning to talk or learning to walk. How do you learn those things? By doing it, and there's no other way to learn it. And as I said, over the years, I'm now 58. I have thick skin, very few things can cause me pain in my work, and I think it's, but I let my colleagues, Joel, who's not so much younger, and Josh and Steve to share their experiences. But to me, having been mentored was important.
Great, thank you. We're getting close to the end. I think we have time for one last question, and then I just have a couple of brief announcements before we end. So Dr. Sung, I think this question's interesting. The person writes, and I think there's research on this, that people who get grants are usually people who have gotten grants in the past, which is a problem, obviously, for somebody new to the process. So outside of having a great proposal, and I think as you mentioned, maybe seeking a collaborator, are there any other tips that you could illustrate with that the person could use to basically demonstrate that they can do the work and carry it out?
This question is very similar to the first that we had, right? How can we get that first federal grant that we want to have? In addition to trying getting advice, build your own peer review process around yourself, even before submitting your work. I don't know. This. I don't know if you work in a school that offers good seed grant money, like here at CUNY, the City University of New York. Not just the university, our union provides very decent internal funding programs that are much less competitive. It's not that difficult to get that 6,000 or 8,000 that you need to gather some preliminary data or build partnerships. So, those internal funding opportunities should be the training ground that we use to sharpen our skills, to get the right data, to straighten out our research questions. I've been here at John Jay since 2000. I came here exactly 20 years ago, and I have gotten $200,000 in internal funding. And the way I did it is I just made applying to those multiple different funding opportunities as a discipline and as an exercise that I do, because usually the deadlines are around right before the Christmas time. I have made it a discipline for myself. End of year, a 5-page proposals out, and then I use that to get money for travel, to get data, to train students, and then and I use that as a stepping stone to go after bigger federal grants. And it has sold me pretty well. So I don't know. It depends on the place that you are, but probably starting from smaller funding opportunities might be a good idea. But again, it's that resolve. Yeah, you have to tell yourself that you're good, that you are not second to anyone, that your ideas are great for solving people's problems, helping people in needs, and then keep trying. And I think you learn to walk by walking. And this is grant seeking is the same.
Yep, I think that's right. We're coming to the end. I guess I would just briefly add to what Dr. Sung said, that obviously proof of concept from seed money is terrific. I think the only other thing, that might work to kind of show that you can do it is if you say you're going to use particular data that you actually can demonstrate you have access to the data, or if you're using a particularly advanced, maybe methodological technique, maybe show that you have the training, that you took a course, that you're equipped and you can actually carry out what you promised. But we're close to the end here, so I just want to again thank Dr. Sung and Steve for the terrific talk, and I think the excellent feedback to the questions that arose. Obviously, we want to thank NIJ again and Dr. Angela Moore in particular for all of their support during this process of getting things ready. Just a quick reminder, everybody, to please complete the post-event survey. Again, the goal is to get feedback so that we can refine things and enhance our future offerings. It'll just take a couple of minutes. And then just to plug our next session, things go by quick. The next session is in 1 week, February 24th, also 11:30 to 1 p.m. And we will be hearing from Dr. Matthew D. Michel. He is at RTI, and he will be talking on finding external funding opportunities in criminal justice. Please spread the word to your colleagues and networks. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to come to today's talk. And I'll just close with reiterating what Dr. Capellan said at the outset. We're very excited about the center's mission, and we look forward to our future speakers and events. Thank you, everybody.